The massive war room of the Zephyrian flagship hummed with quiet energy. Emperor Vexthul stood before a giant holographic display showing the galaxy. Tiny red dots marked every world under Imperial control. There were 847 of them, scattered across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Each dot represented billions of lives bowing to Zephyrian rule. Only one small yellow system remained, unconquered in the outer rim. Sol, a nothing system with a primitive species called humans, living on the 3rd planet, Your Majesty, Admiral Kethvar said, his scaled hands dancing over the control panel. Our scouts report the humans have finally noticed our approach. Their military leaders are gathering on their homeworld. Vexthul's 4 eyes focused on the tiny yellow dot. After 3,000 years of conquest, this would be the final system. The galaxy would finally be complete under Zephyrian rule. He had dreamed of this moment since becoming emperor 2 centuries ago. Show me their defenses, he commanded. The display zoomed in on the Sol system. Earth appeared as a blue-green marble surrounded by orbital stations and a modest fleet of ships. Admiral Kethvar read the numbers aloud. 200 ships, Your Majesty. Their largest vessel is barely 1 kilometer long. Primitive fusion drives. No energy shields that our sensors can detect. Their orbital defense platforms use kinetic weapons and basic laser arrays. General Zixthor, the Empire's master of ground warfare, laughed. It was a harsh sound like breaking glass. My landing forces could conquer that world with a single legion. Why do we bring the full armada for such weak prey? Vexthul smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Because this is history, my friends. When we take Earth, we complete the greatest conquest in galactic history. No intelligent species will remain free. The last act of this great drama deserves our full attention. The Emperor walked to the viewing port. Outside, the Imperial Armada stretched as far as his eyes could see. 50,000 warships, each the size of a small moon, millions of soldiers ready to claim the final prize. The engineering crews had worked for decades to build this fleet. Every ship carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. Sir, Communications Officer Plexrum announced, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Already? Vexthul turned from the window. Most species waited until Imperial ships entered their system before attempting contact. Are they surrendering? No, Your Majesty. They're requesting a formal meeting. They say they want to discuss terms before any fighting begins. The command staff exchanged glances. This was unusual but not unknown. Some species preferred to negotiate their surrender rather than face complete destruction. It was often easier than forcing a full invasion. What do our xenopsychologists say about humans? Vexthul asked. Dr. Yithnal, the Imperial expert on alien behavior, consulted her datapad. They're a young species, Your Majesty. They only achieved faster-than-light travel 300 years ago. Very primitive compared to most civilizations we've encountered. They seem to value something they call diplomacy. They prefer talking to fighting when possible. Interesting, Vexthul mused. Most primitive species simply panic when they see our fleet. These humans want to talk first. Shall I tell them to surrender immediately? Plexrum asked. No. Vexthul made his decision quickly. Grant their request. A meeting will give them time to understand the hopelessness of their situation. Sometimes a peaceful surrender saves everyone trouble. Admiral Kethvar looked concerned. Your Majesty, allowing enemy representatives aboard the flagship could be dangerous. We know little about human capabilities. Vexthul waved dismissively. What could 200 primitive ships do against our armada? If they wanted to attack, they would have tried already. No, they clearly understand they cannot win. This meeting is just their way of accepting defeat with some dignity. Where shall we hold the meeting? General Zixthor asked. The Grand Council chamber. Let them see the full majesty of imperial power. When they understand what they face, surrender will seem like mercy. As the communications officer sent the reply to Earth, Vexthul studied the tactical display again. Human ships were small and simple compared to Zephyrian vessels. Their technology seemed at least 5,000 years behind imperial standards. Most of their population lived on just one world, making conquest simple once resistance ended. Dr. Yithnal, he said, what can you tell me about human psychology? How do they typically react to overwhelming odds? The xenopsychologist scrolled through her files. They seem to have an unusual trait, Your Majesty. According to our observations, humans often continue fighting even when victory appears impossible. However, they also show great capacity for logical thinking. when presented with clear evidence of inevitable defeat. Most human leaders choose survival over destruction. Good. Then this meeting should proceed smoothly. Over the next several hours, the Imperial fleet continued its approach toward Earth. Long-range sensors tracked every human ship and defense platform. The numbers never changed. 200 ships against 50,000. No hidden fleets emerged from behind planets or asteroids. No massive defense networks activated. Earth seemed to be exactly what it appeared to be. The humans sent a small diplomatic vessel to meet the Imperial flagship. It was tiny, barely large enough for a few passengers. Sensor scans revealed no weapons, no shields, no advanced technology at all. Just a simple transport carrying representatives who wanted to talk. Your Majesty, Admiral Kethvar reported, the human diplomatic ship is requesting permission to dock. Granted. Have security teams standing by, but don't let our guests see them. We want this to appear civilized. The human ship docked with barely a whisper. The visitors were brought aboard under heavy escort, though the guards remained hidden from view. Bexthal wanted the humans to see Imperial power, not Imperial paranoia. When the great doors to the council chamber opened, 3 humans walked inside. They appeared calm, almost relaxed as they took in the massive room with its soaring ceiling and walls covered in Imperial battle honors. Most species representatives trembled when seeing this display. The humans simply looked around with what seemed like professional interest. The lead human was a female with dark hair and intelligent eyes. She stepped forward and bowed politely. Your Imperial Majesty, she said in perfect Zephyrian, I am Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth's Diplomatic Corps. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Vexthul was impressed despite himself. Most primitive species couldn't speak proper Zephyrian at all. This human's pronunciation was flawless, with exactly the right formal inflections for addressing an emperor. Ambassador Vasquez, he replied, settling onto his throne. I confess myself curious about your request. Most species in your position choose to surrender immediately, rather than waste time in discussion. The human ambassador smiled slightly. We prefer to understand the full situation before making important decisions, Your Majesty. Would it be possible for you to explain the exact terms you're offering? Of course. Bexthal gestured to his advisors. We are nothing if not reasonable. As the imperial terms were prepared for presentation, the emperor studied the human delegation. They seemed remarkably calm for representatives of a doomed world. Either they were very good at hiding fear, or they knew something he didn't. But what could they possibly know that would change anything? His fleet was unstoppable. His victory was certain. Tomorrow, the galaxy would finally be complete. The Grand Council chamber of the Imperial flagship was a masterpiece of intimidation. Towering walls displayed the banners of 847 conquered worlds. Each banner told the story of a species that had once ruled their own destiny, now reduced to serving the Zephyrian Empire. The ceiling rose high above, painted with scenes of imperial victories stretching back 3 millennia. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked calmly across the polished floor, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind her, 2 other members of Earth's diplomatic team followed quietly. They showed no signs of fear or nervousness as they approached the massive throne where Emperor Vexthul waited. The Emperor studied the humans carefully. In his long experience, most species revealed their true nature in moments like this. Some begged. Others raged helplessly. A few tried to appear brave while clearly terrified inside. These humans seemed genuinely composed, as if this were just another day at work. Please be seated, Vexthul said, gesturing to chairs that had been arranged before his throne. The chairs were deliberately small, forcing visitors to look up at the Emperor's imposing figure. Elena took her seat and opened a small device that projected a holographic display. Before we begin, Your Majesty, would it be acceptable for me to record this meeting? It helps ensure accuracy when reporting back to my government. The request was polite and reasonable. Vexthul nodded approval. Most primitive species were too frightened to think about record-keeping during surrender negotiations. Admiral Kethvar stepped forward with a data crystal. These are the standard terms offered to all conquered species, he announced. The Imperial Council has found them fair and generous. Elena accepted the crystal and inserted it into her device. As she read, her expression remained neutral and professional. The terms appeared on her holographic display for her team to review. The first requirement, Admiral Kethvar continued, is immediate and unconditional surrender of all military forces. Human ships will be disarmed and their crews integrated into Imperial service or relocated as needed. Elena made notes on her device. I understand. Please continue. Second, Earth's government will be dissolved. The planet will be administered directly by an Imperial governor appointed by His Majesty. More notes. Still no reaction from the human ambassador. Third, human population will be reduced to sustainable levels. 90% of your species will be relocated to designated worlds where they can serve the Empire through productive labor. Elena's pen paused for just a moment before continuing. Behind her, one of her team members shifted slightly in his chair. But still no protests or emotional outbursts. General Zixthor took over the presentation. Fourth, Earth's resources will be extracted for Imperial use. Your world contains several useful minerals and has adequate space for industrial development. Fifth, Dr. Yithnal added, the remaining human population will undergo cultural adjustment programs. This will help your species adapt to life within the Empire. Elena finished her notes and looked up. Thank you for the detailed explanation. These terms are quite comprehensive. May I ask a few questions about the legal framework supporting this conquest? The question surprised everyone in the chamber. Most species asked about survival, about mercy, about the fate of their loved ones. This human wanted to discuss legal frameworks. Vexthul leaned forward with interest. What kind of legal questions do you have, Ambassador? Well, Your Majesty, I'm curious about the Imperial authority for territorial expansion. Under what specific laws does the Empire claim the right to conquer independent systems? Admiral Kethvar looked confused. The right of the strong to rule the weak. This has been Imperial law for thousands of years. Elena nodded and made more notes. I see. And what about existing territorial boundaries? Does the Empire recognize any prior claims to the Sol system? Prior claims? General Zixthor laughed. Your species barely left their own planet until 3 centuries ago. What prior claims could possibly exist? That's an interesting point, Elena replied calmly. What about interstellar law? Does the Empire acknowledge any legal obligations to other galactic civilizations? The Imperial advisors exchanged glances. These questions seemed pointless. Dr. Yithnal consulted her files quickly. There are no other galactic civilizations, she said. The Empire has conquered or destroyed all advanced species. Your world is the last, Elena made another note. All advanced species have been conquered or destroyed. That's quite definitive. Are you certain about that statement? Absolutely certain, Vexthul said with pride. We have detailed records of every campaign, every victory. 3,000 years of expansion have brought every intelligent species under Imperial rule, including species that were members of the Galactic Concordance of Sentient Species. The chamber fell completely silent. Vexthul stared at the human ambassador with 4 unblinking eyes. That name hadn't been spoken in his presence for centuries. The Concordance, he said slowly, was destroyed long ago. It died with the civilizations that created it. Elena smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It wasn't a friendly smile. That's interesting, Your Majesty. Our records suggest otherwise. Admiral Kethvar stepped forward aggressively. What records? Your species wasn't even spacefaring when the Concordance existed. You're quite right, Elena agreed. Humanity achieved interstellar flight long after the Concordance was established. However, we did eventually make contact with its surviving members. Impossible, General Zixthor declared. There are no surviving members. The Empire conquered them all. Elena reached into her diplomatic case and withdrew a small crystalline device. It glowed with soft blue light and projected complex symbols into the air above the table. This is a Concordance legal seal, she said quietly. Issued to Earth 847 years ago when humanity was formally accepted as the 24th member species. The glow from the crystal cast strange shadows across the faces of the Imperial leadership. Vexthul recognized the device immediately. He had seen similar seals in ancient museums. Relics from the Empire's early days when other civilizations still dared to make laws. That proves nothing, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Ancient legal documents have no power. The Empire is the only law in this galaxy. Elena stood and walked closer to the throne. The crystal's light grew brighter in her hand. Your Imperial Majesty, she said formally, I must inform you that your planned conquest of the Sol system violates multiple interstellar laws. Most importantly, you have forgotten rule number 1. Rule number 1 of what? Vexthul demanded, though part of him already feared the answer. Rule number 1 of the Galactic Concordance of Sentient Species, ratified 4,147 standard years ago and never officially dissolved. Elena raised the crystal higher, and its light filled the entire chamber. No member species of the Concordance may engage in hostile action against another member species without formal declaration through the Galactic Arbitration Council and a minimum 50-year mediation period. The crystal pulsed once, twice, 3 times. Each pulse sent out waves of energy that Imperial sensors couldn't identify, but somehow felt significant. Furthermore, Elena continued, any member species under attack has the right to invoke Article 847, collective self-defense by all Concordance members. Emperor Vexthul gripped the arms of his throne. There are no other Concordance members. We destroyed them all. Elena's smile returned, but now it looked different. Not friendly, but not cruel either. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that was about to change everything. Your Majesty, she said softly, you really should have done better research. The crystal in Elena's hand pulsed again, and this time something impossible happened. Throughout the Imperial flagship, communication systems that had been silent for millennia suddenly activated. Ancient frequencies forgotten by Imperial technology began carrying signals across the galaxy. Emperor Vexthul watched in growing alarm as his communication officers scrambled to understand what was happening. Status reports flooded in from across the ship as dormant systems awakened without authorization. Admiral Kethvar, he commanded, shut down all external communications immediately. I'm trying. Your Majesty, the Admiral replied, his hands flying over control panels. But these signals are using protocols our systems don't recognize. They're piggybacking on our own network somehow. Elena remained standing calmly before the throne, the glowing crystal still in her hand. Your Majesty, I should explain what's happening. When I activated the Concordance legal seal, it sent out what we call a verification signal. Every surviving member species is now confirming their continued existence. Impossible, Dr. Yithnal said, checking her files frantically. Our records show complete conquest of all advanced civilizations. We have documentation of every campaign. Your records are accurate as far as they go, Elena agreed. The Empire did conquer 23 member species of the Concordance. However, conquest and extinction are not the same thing. General Zixthor stepped forward threateningly. Explain yourself, human. Elena gestured to one of her team members who activated a portable projector. A 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared in the air, showing Imperial territory in red and a network of green dots scattered throughout. When the Empire began its expansion, Elena began, the Concordance members realized they couldn't win through direct military confrontation. So they developed a different strategy, survival through dispersal and concealment. The green dots on the map began to pulse in sequence, each one connected to others by thin lines of light. The Altarians, conquered 2,147 years ago, had already established hidden colonies in 47 different systems. When their homeworld fell, the survivors activated contingency plans that had been prepared for centuries. A cluster of green dots in the outer rim glowed brighter. The Vegan Collective, destroyed 2,156 years ago, had downloaded their entire population into quantum storage matrices. They've been hiding in asteroid belts and nebulae ever since, waiting for the right moment to return. More dots appeared, scattered across the galactic map in places the Empire had never bothered to explore. The Centauri Republic, the Procyon Federation, the Sirius Alliance, all conquered, all presumed extinct, all actually in hiding with their governments and military forces intact. Vexthul stared at the map in growing horror. If this was true, then the Empire hadn't conquered the galaxy at all. They had simply driven their enemies underground. This is impossible, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Our sensors would have detected any surviving populations. Elena smiled. Your Majesty, you're thinking like a conqueror instead of like a survivor. These species had thousands of years to prepare. They didn't try to hide from your sensors. They learned to look like things you wouldn't bother investigating. The map zoomed in on an Imperial mining operation. For example, mining platform 7th Alpha in the Rigel sector has been operated by disguised Altarian refugees for over 1,000 years. They've been sending intelligence reports and raw materials to their hidden colonies while appearing to be loyal Imperial subjects. Admiral Kethvar checked his own records. Mining Platform 7 Alpha was indeed one of their most productive facilities, staffed by what they believed were conquered aliens who had adapted well to Imperial rule. The Vega Nebula Research Station, Elena continued, where Imperial scientists have been studying quantum phenomena for 8 centuries. It's actually been run by the surviving Vegan collective, who have been using Imperial resources to develop new technologies. Freight Route Gamma 7, which carries supplies between 200 Imperial worlds. The transportation company is owned and operated by descendants of the Procyon Federation. More examples appeared on the map, each one showing how surviving concordant species had hidden in plain sight throughout the Empire. They had been watching, learning, and preparing for 2,000 years or more. Dr. Yithnal was scanning through Imperial databases frantically. Your Majesty, if this is true, then our intelligence about the galaxy is completely wrong. These species could have been coordinating resistance activities for centuries. They have been, Elena confirmed, but not resistance in the way you might think. The Concordants learned long ago that military force alone couldn't defeat the Empire, so they developed a different approach: legal and political warfare. She gestured to her team member, who activated another display. This one showed a massive document database with thousands of interconnected files. For the past 847 years, every Concordance member species has been documenting Imperial activities. Every conquest, every atrocity, every violation of interstellar law. Earth has served as the central repository for this evidence. Evidence of what? General Zixthor demanded. War crimes, Your Majesty. Genocide. Violations of every principle of civilized behavior that has ever existed in this galaxy. The complete legal case for removing Imperial authority and restoring legitimate government to conquered worlds. Vexthal stood from his throne, his 4 eyes blazing with anger. Legal authority? We are the authority. We conquered this galaxy through strength and courage. No, Your Majesty, Elena said quietly. You conquered through fear and overwhelming force. But conquest without legal foundation is just large-scale piracy. And piracy, even on a galactic scale, is still a crime. The communication systems throughout the ship were now broadcasting constantly. Reports came in from across the Empire of strange signals being detected, of hidden installations revealing themselves, of supposedly conquered populations declaring their true allegiances. Sir, Communications Officer Plexrim announced, we're receiving formal legal documents from 23 different sources. They're all filing complaints with something called the Galactic Arbitration Council. Elena nodded. The council was never disbanded, Your Majesty. It just went into hiding along with everyone else. For 3,000 years, they've been waiting for enough evidence to build an unassailable legal case against the Empire. And now they have it, she continued, thanks to Imperial record-keeping. Your own databases contain detailed documentation of every conquest, every atrocity, every violation of interstellar law. You've been building the case against yourselves for 3 millennia. The map showed more green dots appearing by the minute as hidden concordance facilities revealed themselves across the galaxy. What had seemed like complete Imperial domination was suddenly revealed as a thin layer of control over a galaxy where the Empire's enemies had never actually surrendered. What do you want? Vexthal asked finally. Elena's expression became serious. Justice, Your Majesty. The restoration of legitimate government to conquered worlds. Reparations for the species your Empire has oppressed. And most importantly, an end to the cycle of conquest and destruction that has plagued this galaxy for 3,000 years. She held up the crystal again. The Concordance is offering the Empire one chance to surrender peacefully and submit to legal judgment. Your alternative is to face coordinated resistance from every species you thought you had destroyed. Emperor Vexithul looked at the map showing green lights across his empire, listened to the reports of hidden enemies revealing themselves throughout his territory, and realized that everything he thought he knew about the galaxy was wrong. How long? He asked quietly. How long what, Your Majesty? How long have you been planning this? Elena smiled. Ever since humanity learned what had happened to the Concordance. 47 years, Your Majesty. We've been preparing for this moment for 847 years. The transformation happening across the galaxy was beyond anything Emperor Vexthal had ever witnessed. Every few minutes, another report arrived from Imperial commanders facing situations they didn't understand. Hidden installations were appearing throughout Imperial space, revealing themselves after centuries of concealment. Admiral Kethvar read the latest reports with growing alarm. Your Majesty, Sector Command 12 reports that the asteroid mining facility at Kepler 442 has just revealed itself to be a massive military shipyard. They're launching vessels using technology we don't recognize. Sector Command 19 says their supply depot at Wolf 359 has been controlled by disguised aliens for over 500 years. The entire logistics network for that region may be compromised. Fleet Command reports that navigation data for the Vega trade routes has been systematically altered. Our ships have been flying through monitored space for centuries without knowing it. Elena watched the Imperial leadership struggle to understand the scope of what they faced. Your Majesty, what you're seeing is the activation of a network that has taken nearly 1,000 years to build. Every hidden colony, every disguised facility, every sleeper agent, they're all revealing themselves simultaneously. General Zixthor was studying tactical displays that showed the emerging threat. These numbers, if these reports are accurate, there could be thousands of hidden installations throughout the Empire. Tens of thousands, Elena corrected. The concordant species didn't just survive, they thrived. While the Empire focused on controlling conquered worlds, the survivors built an entire parallel civilization. Dr. Yithnal looked up from her data analysis. Your Majesty, our xenopsychological profiles of conquered species were completely wrong. We thought we were dealing with broken populations that had accepted Imperial rule. Instead, we were monitoring carefully constructed deceptions. The holographic map of the galaxy had changed dramatically. Where before it showed solid red Imperial territory with scattered green dots, now it revealed a complex web of hidden connections running throughout the Empire. Green lines linked hidden facilities, secret colonies, and camouflaged installations across hundreds of systems. How is this possible? Vexthul demanded. Our security forces monitor all conquered populations. Our intelligence networks watch for any signs of rebellion. Elena gestured to one of her companions, who activated another display. This one showed Imperial personnel files, thousands of them. Your Majesty, look at these records. Mining Supervisor Kaltos on Rigel Prime. His psychological profile shows complete loyalty to the Empire. Perfect work record for 400 years. No signs of subversive activity. The file expanded to show a detailed background check. Kaltos is actually Kallios of the Altarian survivors. He's been feeding intelligence to hidden Altarian colonies while managing one of your most productive mining operations. Another file appeared. Transport Captain Vexara has moved Imperial supplies safely for 300 years. Completely trustworthy according to all evaluations. She's actually Vexara of the Procyon Federation. And she's been mapping Imperial supply lines for the Resistance Network. File after file appeared, each showing Imperial personnel who were actually Concordance agents. Scientists, miners, transport workers, even low-level administrators, all of them hiding their true identities while serving the Empire faithfully enough to avoid suspicion. The Empire's greatest strength became its greatest weakness, Elena explained. Your ability to control conquered populations through fear made you overconfident. You stopped looking for deception because you believed everyone was too frightened to resist. Admiral Kethvar was reviewing security protocols frantically. Our screening procedures should have caught infiltrators. We have psychological evaluation, genetic scanning, background verification, all of which can be fooled if you have centuries to prepare and access to advanced technology, Elena replied. The concordant species didn't try to fight your security measures. They learned to work within them. Communications Officer Plexrim announced another development. Your Majesty, we're receiving coordination signals from across the galaxy. These hidden installations are communicating with each other using quantum entanglement networks. Elena nodded. Instantaneous communication across any distance, completely undetectable by conventional sensors. The Concordance has been operating a galaxy-wide information network for over 500 years. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Not only had the conquered species survived, they had built a shadow civilization that spanned the entire galaxy. They had been watching every Imperial move, documenting every crime, preparing for this moment when they could coordinate a unified response. What about Earth? General Zixthor asked. If humanity joined the Concordance 847 years ago, what have you been doing all this time? Elena smiled with obvious pride. What humans do best, General. Organization, logistics, and long-term planning. The concordant species were excellent at hiding and surviving, but they needed coordination to become truly effective. A new display showed the structure of the hidden network. Earth appeared at the center with communication lines reaching out to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity became the central nervous system of the resistance, Elena continued. We established secure communication protocols, coordinated intelligence gathering, and most importantly, we built the legal framework for challenging imperial authority. For 8 centuries, human diplomats have been secretly meeting with concordant survivors, documenting imperial crimes, and preparing the legal case that would justify removing the empire from power. Emperor Vexthul was beginning to understand the true magnitude of what he faced. This wasn't just a military rebellion. It was a coordinated legal, political, and logistical challenge to everything the empire represented. The evidence we've gathered, Elena continued, includes detailed documentation of 847 planetary conquests, 23 acts of genocide, thousands of violations of interstellar law, and systematic oppression of billions of sentient beings. Every imperial communication has been monitored and recorded. Every military operation has been observed and documented. Every administrative decision has been analyzed and catalogued. Dr. Yithnall looked sick. You're saying the Empire has no secrets at all? None, Elena confirmed. We know your military capabilities better than you do. We've mapped every supply route, identified every weakness in your logistics network, and analyzed every tactical doctrine you use. Admiral Kethvar was studying fleet deployment reports. Your Majesty, if they have this much intelligence about our operations, then they know exactly how to counter our military responses. That's correct, Admiral, Elena said. The Concordance has spent centuries learning how to defeat Imperial forces without engaging in costly direct battles. Why fight your ships when they can disable your supply lines? Why attack your bases when they can turn your own personnel against you? The reports from across the Empire were becoming more alarming by the hour. Supply convoys were mysteriously breaking down. Communication networks were experiencing unexplained failures. Personnel at critical facilities were revealing themselves as Concordance agents and abandoning their posts. Your Majesty, Communications Officer Plexrim announced, Fleet Commands 7, 12, and 19 report that their logistics networks have collapsed. Ships are running out of fuel and supplies. Sector Command 15 says their administrative computers have been locked out by security protocols they don't recognize. The Imperial Treasury reports that financial transfers to 200 systems have been blocked by banking. Institutions claiming legal authority from something called the Galactic Arbitration Council. Elena watched the Imperial leadership realize that their empire was dissolving around them. Your Majesty, the Concordance isn't just revealing itself. It's activating systems that have been hidden within your empire for centuries. Every critical function you depend on has been quietly infiltrated and compromised. Emperor Vexthul gripped his throne as he watched his life's work crumble. 3,000 years of conquest were being undone by enemies he had thought were extinct. What do you want from us? He asked finally. Elena's expression became serious. The same thing you've demanded from 847 conquered worlds, Your Majesty. Unconditional surrender. Emperor Vexthul stared at the human ambassador for a long moment. Around him, his advisors waited nervously as reports continued flowing in from across the empire. Everything they had built over 3 millennia was falling apart, not through military defeat, but through the revelation that their enemies had never truly been conquered at all. Unconditional surrender, he repeated slowly, to a legal system that hasn't existed for thousands of years. Elena's expression remained calm but firm. The Galactic Arbitration Council never stopped existing, Your Majesty. It just went into exile. For 3,000 years, the legitimate government of this galaxy has been operating in secret, waiting for enough evidence to restore legal order. Admiral Kethvar stepped forward. Your Majesty, we still have the largest fleet in the galaxy. 50,000 warships against scattered resistance groups hiding in asteroids and nebulae. Admiral, Elena said quietly, you should update your intelligence estimates. She gestured to her team member who activated a new tactical display. What it showed made everyone in the chamber freeze in shock. The holographic map of the Sol system had changed completely. What Imperial sensors had detected as 200 primitive human ships was revealed as an elaborate deception. The actual human fleet numbered in the tens of thousands using cloaking technology that made them invisible to Imperial sensors. But that wasn't the worst revelation. Throughout Imperial space, hidden shipyards were launching fleets that had been under construction for centuries. The scattered green dots on the galactic map were revealing themselves to be massive military installations. The Altarian survivors didn't just hide in 47 systems, Elena explained. They built shipyards in 47 systems. The Vegan Collective didn't just preserve their population in quantum storage. They used that time to design new weapons and defenses. General Zixthor was reading tactical reports with growing alarm. Your Majesty, our garrison commanders are reporting that they're surrounded. Ships are appearing from nowhere using technology we've never seen before. Stealth fields that bend light and gravity, Elena said. Quantum weapons that can disable Imperial shields. Navigation systems that can create artificial wormholes for instant travel across the galaxy. Dr. Yithnol looked up from her analysis. Our technology assessments were completely wrong. These species have been advancing their capabilities for thousands of years while hiding from us. Emperor Vexthul realized the true scope of his situation. Not only had the Empire failed to destroy its enemies, but those enemies had used their time in hiding to become more advanced than the Empire itself. What about our ground forces? He asked desperately. We have millions of soldiers stationed throughout the galaxy. Elena's expression became sad. Your Majesty, those soldiers are discovering that the populations they thought they were controlling have been preparing for this day for centuries. Imperial garrisons are being surrounded by populations they believed were helpless. Reports flooded in confirming her words. On world after world, supposedly conquered populations were revealing hidden weapons, organized resistance networks, and detailed plans for overthrowing Imperial rule. The mining world of Kepler 442 reports that the entire population has risen in coordinated revolt. Our garrison is outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The agricultural world of Gliesa 667c says the farmers have revealed themselves to be trained. Military personnel using the planet as a food production base for the resistance. Industrial, World Wolf 1061 reports that the factory workers have converted their manufacturing facilities into weapons production centers. Communications officer Plexrim's voice was becoming strained. Your Majesty, we're receiving surrender demands from our own garrison commanders. They're surrounded and cut off from supply lines. Elena watched the Imperial leadership absorb the reality of their situation. Your Majesty, the Empire made a fundamental error. You confused control with consent. For 3,000 years, conquered populations have been obeying Imperial rule, not because they accepted it, but because they were waiting for the right moment to overthrow it. Admiral Kethvar was studying fleet positions frantically. We can concentrate our forces, fight our way through to critical systems, maintain control of key worlds. Admiral, Elena said gently, look at your supply situation. New displays showed the Empire's logistics networks, fuel production facilities, food distribution centers, raw material processing plants. All of them were either controlled by concordance agents or completely dependent on cooperation from supposedly conquered populations. The Empire's military might depends entirely on the cooperation of the species you conquered, Elena explained. Your ships need fuel refined by Altarian survivors. Your soldiers eat food grown by disguised Procyon Federation farmers. Your weapons are manufactured in factories staffed by hidden concordance agents. When those populations stop cooperating, your military machine simply stops functioning. The truth was devastating. The Empire hadn't conquered the galaxy. It had become completely dependent on the species it thought it had defeated. Without their cooperation, Imperial forces couldn't eat, couldn't refuel, couldn't even maintain their equipment. General Zixthor threw down his datapad in frustration. Then we fight anyway. The Empire will not surrender to primitives and rebels. Emperor Vexthul stood from his throne, his 4 eyes blazing. The general is right. We are the Zephyrian Empire. We have ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. We will not bow to a conspiracy of defeated enemies. Elena nodded sadly. I was afraid you might say that, Your Majesty. She activated her crystal again, and this time the pulse that went out was different. Instead of the gentle verification signal from before, this was sharp and commanding. I invoke Article 847 of the Galactic Concordance, she announced formally. All member species are hereby authorized to use any means necessary to defend themselves against continued Imperial aggression. The effect was immediate. Reports flooded in from across the Empire as the hidden concordance forces went from passive resistance to active warfare. Fleet. Command reports that our ships at Rigel are under attack by vessels emerging from the local nebula. Sector Command 7 says their headquarters is surrounded by forces that appeared from underground tunnels. The Imperial Treasury reports that all financial systems have been locked down by order of the Galactic Arbitration Council. What followed was unlike any war in galactic history. Imperial forces found themselves fighting enemies who knew every Imperial tactic, had studied every Imperial weakness, and had prepared counters to every Imperial strategy. Ships ran out of fuel when supply convoys failed to arrive. Bases lost power when their energy systems were sabotaged from within. Communications networks went silent as hidden concordance agents revealed themselves throughout Imperial infrastructure. Within hours, it became clear that the Empire couldn't fight effectively without the cooperation of the populations it had conquered. And those populations had spent centuries preparing for this moment. Emperor Vexthal watched his empire dissolve around him. 3,000 years of conquest were being undone in a single day by enemies he had thought were extinct. "Stop," he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. Elena looked up from the reports she was monitoring. "Your Majesty?" "Stop the attack," Vexthal said more loudly. We surrender." The chamber fell silent except for the continuing stream of reports from the collapsing empire. "Your Majesty," Admiral Kethavar protested. "We can't surrender to what?" Vexthal interrupted bitterly. "To the legitimate government of the galaxy? To the species whose worlds we stole, whose populations we enslaved, whose civilizations we tried to destroy?" He looked at Elena with something that might have been respect. "You were right, Ambassador. We forgot rule number 1. We forgot that conquest without justice is just piracy on a large scale." Elena stood and bowed formally. "Your Imperial Majesty, on behalf of the Galactic Arbitration Council and the 24 member species of the Concordance, I accept your surrender." She paused, then added more gently, "Your Majesty, the Concordance seeks justice, not revenge. The Empire will be held accountable for its crimes, but the Zephyrian people will not be punished for the actions of their leaders." As the crystal in Elena's hand pulsed one final time, sending out the signal that would end the war before it truly began, Emperor Vexthal realized that humanity's greatest weapon had never been military might. It had been patience. The patience to wait 847 years for justice. The patience to build a galaxy-wide network of cooperation and law. The patience to prove that civilization was stronger than conquest. The Empire had thought it ruled the galaxy. Instead, it had learned that the galaxy had been quietly ruling itself all along, waiting for the right moment to restore the justice that conquest could never truly destroy.